surely gather. Behold, they shall make attempts. But it never said, behold, you shall surely be defeated. It's not possible. Child of God, you need to understand that as a child of God, whatever you permit into your life, you are promoted. And you see here, children of God are settling for less. Let me show you how you can be settling for less and you don't know it. Look at Luke chapter 15, verse 16. Luke 15, verse 16. Luke 15, verse 16. If you find yourself settling for less, it might be that you are far from God. You are far from His presence. He's not talking to you like before. He's not telling you your next direction or your next step. If you are managing, you are settling for less. Look at it. In Luke 15, verse 16, it says, and he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat. He would have filled his belly with the husk. In other words, he was getting ready to eat the food of pigs. And can I tell you, Luke is very intentional. The author, Luke, is very intentional when he was writing the book of Luke. When he used the word swine, swine in the Hebrew culture is the worst level. Is the worst level of degradation. The worst level of deterioration where you are going low. Swine, pigs. The Jews, the Hebrews, they don't touch pigs. They don't eat pigs. That's why the Bible says, if you see the book of Acts, when Peter was praying, that a tray came down from heaven and there were unclean things. Swine is regarded as an unclean thing. That's why Peter even had to fight God and say, God, no, you are the one that said we should not eat swine. Because he's so strong in their culture. And Luke makes us understand that this guy was about to eat the food of a pig. Somebody that was coming from a house that fatted calves was arranged outside. So you can see the level of deterioration, falling from grace to grass, falling to a total level of in fact, I don't know how to explain it, but I can tell you he was about to settle for less. And that is when a massive sign that shows you that you are far from your Father's house. Your senses change. You are shifted from kingship to servanthood. Your value of self depreciates. You have gotten to a place whereby you don't send any longer. You don't care. Whatever happens, let it happen. You are far from the presence of God. It's time for you to take action. It's time for you to return home. And I'm so happy when you look at Luke chapter 15, verse 17. The Bible says he came to himself. Tap your neighbor and tell that neighbor, come to yourself. Come to yourself. I didn't say stop telling that neighbor. Tap him and say, come to yourself. Come to yourself. If that person is sleeping, make the tap bigger. Say, come online. Come to yourself. Come to yourself. Come to yourself. In Luke 15, verse 17. And when he came to himself, somebody said he received sense. He received sense. He came to himself. Can I tell you, a lot of us are sitting down here, we are not ourselves. We are not ourselves. Who are you? The real you is that you are a royal priesthood. Who are you? You are the child of a king. Who are you? You are the son of the living God. Who are you? Jesus Christ is not now the only begotten son. He is the first son of God. You are also joint heirs with Jesus Christ. You have been elevated. But you see, as I'm saying this to you, some of you don't believe it. You know why? Because you have not come to yourself. You need to see who you are. You have gone far from his presence that even you don't know your identity because of sin, because of things that have distracted you. He said he came to himself. Enough of excuses. I don't like the state that I'm in. To show you that he came to himself, but his mentality had changed. He did not even say, I am returning to my father's house to go and take my sonship. What did he say? He said, what I want to do is that, let me go back to my father's house. At least a servant's position. The servants in my father's house, they are even doing better than me. So, when I go to my father's house, I will just beg him and say, Father, please, make me a servant. Ecclesiastes said that I've seen servants riding on horses, and I've seen princes taking the position of servants. There are many of us here this morning. We have taken position of servants. We are walking instead of riding on horses. Just in a couple of moments, I'm going to be making charges and calling for people. It's time to return home. Enough of you, I'm trying to make ends meet. Selling your body. If you're not selling your body, you are selling your mind. Selling your mind wickedly. Wickedly. How can a person who is a man, you are a young man, you are pretending that you are a woman, and you are chatting with somebody in another country. You send naked pictures of woman to the other person in the country, and the other person says, oh, beautiful. Oh yeah, I'll give you $100, and you are collecting it. And you are saying, pastor, we have to make ends meet. Say, God forbid. Using your mind that God has given you to do great things, you have twisted it. Do you know what Leviathan means? Leviathan means twisted spirit. Leviathan is a devil from the pit of hell. In the book of Revelation that Jesus overcomes. It twists the minds of people so that they begin to use their minds that God has blessed to be fruitful, to do useless and wicked things. It's time for you to come home. When he came to himself, he said, I'm better than this. Number one step for you to come back to the house of your father is to acknowledge that you are in a wrong place. Have you passed that Ojota area? In that Ojota area on the left, from my own side here, there is a dump, a refuse dump there. Every time you pass it, the stench and the smell is so horrible. Last couple of weeks, I was going somewhere. I've never been as close to that dump site as I was last couple of weeks. And when I looked, I screamed. You know why? Because there were houses and huts inside the dustbin. And people were walking as if nothing was happening. I was not judging them, but what I was saying is that you can be in so much rubbish that you can't smell it again because you have stayed inside it for too long. You have stayed so long in that sin. You have stayed so long in that thing that now you are calling evil righteousness. You have stayed so long in that thing that you are doing. You think you have given an excuse for it and a reason why you want to continue doing it. You are a married man, you are sleeping with other women, and you are saying because your wife is not behaving herself, God forgive you. You are a married woman because what a man can do, a woman can do better. You are a married woman, you are saying your husband is not around. Guess what? You want to move up and down. You can be so much rubbish and so much. I'm trying not to use a word. Selah, God bless you. So much rubbish, you can't smell it. Because now you have stayed in it for too long. God is calling you to return home. In a couple of moments, I'm going to call people up. He's saying it's time for you to come home. You have gone far, far away. But when that boy acknowledged that, see, you know what? This is not my state now. No. Mothers, you will understand with me that when you have a child that would rather go out and be eating rubbish when there is sweet food in your house. You will agree with me. You agree with me when you have cooked a fantastic, luscious food. But you see, because children, especially teens, they love association. So they will rather go and eat yam and stew that the tomatoes has expired. They will rather eat it with their boys, with their girls, that come and eat healthy food at home. It's time for you to return home. You can't do it on your own. As I begin to close my message this morning, God is calling you and said you have gone far from home. And you judgmental person, be careful because, in fact, your judgmental nature is pulling you from God. The Pharisees were so judgmental that they could not even know that they were not even close to the presence of God. Why am I saying you must come home? Because home is where your roots are. Home is where your roots are. In Psalm 127 verse 1, the Bible says, except the Lord build a house, they labor in vain that build it. It is time for you to return home. When he came back to himself, the first thing he thought of was what? Home. My father's house. When he came back to himself, I'm sure he remembered what Hosea chapter 6 verse 1 says. Hosea 6 verse 1. He says, come and let us return unto the Lord, for he hath turned and he will heal us. He hath smitten and he will bind us. It's time for you to come to yourself. It's time for you to amend your ways. Like play, some of us here. If you don't listen to this word that the Spirit is touching your heart, it might be too late. It might be too late. Just in a couple of minutes, I'm going to be calling different people because I felt led to be an agent to return people home. An agent to return